thank you very much for agreeing to jump on and do this. That's really kind of you. I guess the first thing is really, tell me a little bit about Microdot.
Microdot was I was going to say it was a business I set up, but well, it wasn't a company. I only became limited much later on. I came up with Microdot in 1990, and what it is it's kind of like my alter ego, whereby on the face of it, it's a design company, design photography, most specifically for the music industry. So design record sleeves, promotional posters, that kind of thing. So it's the name of my business, really. But yes. I came up with it in the first place. The reason I first left college in 1988, and I decided to go against all the advice I was given by tutors and so-called experts that I couldn't do this on my own. I just disregarded all that information and set off to become a freelance record sleeve designer from the get-go. And guess what? The tutors were right, and I got bugger all work. And I got bugger all work for a couple of years. So I thought to myself, do you know what? It's not surprising, really. I'm just some sort of unknown student out of college. Why would anybody give me and it's true if you think about it. Why would a record company take a risk on some unknown guy when they've got somebody in a design agency down the road that they've worked with 100 times before? So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll come up with this persona. So it's not just me as an out of work ex-student, but like I tried to create the illusion that I was a design agency, so thus this Microdot moniker, but that didn't work either, well, funnily enough, right, I've never really got on with record companies that much. All the work I ever got, all the successes I ever had were directly from the bands themselves.
Right.
So Creation didn't get me into the Oasis artwork. Noel Gallagher did, Virgin or Hut, as it was back then, didn't get me into do the Verve's artwork. Richard Ashcroft did. And on it goes, Brett from Suede asked me to do their artwork, not Nude Records. And I think the reason for that was the bands knew that I was completely obsessed and devoted to doing the best job I could for the bands. The record companies just paid the bills as far as I was concerned. We regarded them as the enemy back in the day because they'd always be poking the roaring, and wanting. I used to drive, when I first started, I was doing some stuff for EMI, for dance labels and what have you. And they'd always want the name of the band in big letters at the top of the record for when you're flicking through in record shops. Different. And I thought, this is nuts, this. So I didn't really, because I never really regarded it as a business either, right? I couldn't care less about the money in the beginning. I just wanted to do it for the love of the art. So if you're running a design agency as a business, as all the others were, the record companies would say, can you change this and they would say yes, because obviously they're getting paid by them. Whereas I'd say, well, no, because that's the way it is. That's what I've been asked by Richard or no, not. I never had that problem with those two labels, funnily enough, because they were just cool and let us go on with it, to be honest. But others, no, because that's what I think it should be. I'm the sleeve designer. Do you see what I mean? So record companies regarded me as a bit of a maverick. So that's basically it. Microdot is we're now a fully functioning business because, that was 30 odd years ago. And, now like everybody else, I've got a mortgage to pay and I'm not a young man anymore. That isn't to say that I'm not still as devoted to the art side of it as ever was, but I run it like a business that I never used to. But yeah, it's my creative design and photography business is what Microdot is.
And obviously it's been very successful from the start that you had. And as you said, you first started working with Ashcroft and did the Verve stuff, which must have been fantastic. I mean, was that your first commission?
No, not the first album sleeve I ever did was for a band called the Ruthless Rap Assassins, who are a Manchester hip hop band. And Kermit out of Black Grape.
I do, yes.
That was his band.
That was his band. Oh, okay.
So I was working with them and their sister group, which included Kermit's sister, Christine, called Kiss AMC. That was late 80s. I was doing that.
Oh.
And it was kind of, I met Richard Ashcroft at a party in Wigan in 1989, it might have been. And this was in the days when there was no streaming or anything. If you wanted to hear certain music at a party, you took your records with you. Are you with me?
Yes.
You must remember these times. I mean, I'm getting...
I more than remember those days, and I equally remember people used to write their names on them, so you get them back at the end.
How old are you now? How old are you?
57.
Right, so we're more or less the same age. I'm 59.
Say similar sort of thing, yeah.
We're more or less the same age. But I'm 60 next week. Wow. Anyway, so I was at this party, and I had some records with me, and some of them were sleeves that I'd done for the Rap Assassins. And Richard was there, and he got wind of this, and he was kind of amazed that as a young lad, I'd set out to be a sleeve designer. He said, as he famously said, most lads want to be footballers, DJs, or rock stars, but you actually wanted to be a sleeve designer. And I thought no more of it. And he basically, I bumped into him on a petrol station about 6 o'clock in the morning, about 3 years later. This is no word of a lie, this. 2 years later. And he said, he said, you're that sleeve designer guy. I'm like, you're that guy I met at that party a couple of years back. Yeah, my band's just been signed, and if you want to do the artwork, you can. That's how I got the Verve job. Isn't it? Wow. True story, this, yeah. That's how I got the Verve job, because he was like kind of impressed that I was, I wanted to be a sleeve designer. So he thought, I'm obviously passionate about it. And that's how that started. And then I had to go to London and have a meeting with a guy called Dave Boyd, who ran Hut Records, which was a subsidiary of Virgin, Verve were on. And they were kind of horrified at first that, the Verve, this was in the days when record companies spent a lot of money on bands. They don't anymore, but, they've obviously paid them in advance. They bought them a lot of equipment. It's not like nowadays you record on a laptop in your bedroom. You've got to go into a proper studio. Before a record comes out, the record company's 100 grand into them. So they were horrified that this new signing that they'd got, this new promising thing, the Verve, or Verve as they were known then, they'd obviously got some London agency lined up to do all the artwork, and then Ashcroft dropped the bombshell that some guys met at a party in Wigan's doing it, so they were like... Until I turned up with the first single and the artwork, and I was vindicated. They were like, wow, yeah, that's great. You can obviously do the job. And in the end, other than Fourth, which was the album that came out way after everything, I did everything the Verve ever released. So, you're only as good as your last job. And so to keep going through the band's career, like I said, apart from the 2008 record or whatever it was, I did everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a similar kind of thing, I guess, not necessarily with the getting the Oasis job, but I mean, you did everything for Oasis from, designing the logo all the way through, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, it was another mad meeting. I mean, I met Noel in a lift in Manchester talking about Adidas trainers, and and he got me the job because he was Oasis weren't signed then. But he got me the job of doing the artwork for the Inspiral Carpets, who he was roadieing for at the time. So and then they got signed. I remember the day after he came into my little studio I had in, because they were in the same building. That's how we met. The Inspiral Carpets and the fledgling Microdot, as it was then.
Oh, okay. So you shared the building. Cool.
That's how the meeting came about. And I remember he said, yeah, we've just been signed. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, we were in Glasgow last night. And, Alan McGee, he was there and he offered us a deal. I'm like, you're joking? No.
Wow.
So that was 93. But I'd met him the year before. So there's been loads of lucky chance meetings. But like I keep saying, you're only as good as your last job. And obviously Noel doesn't suffer any fools. So but yeah, I started working with him in 93. First thing we did was the logo, and again everything that Oasis released, certainly in the UK throughout the 90s, could be argued the good bit.
I was just going to say the good bits because I mean, yeah, and you can't see the wall from here, but obviously when we met, I've got you to sign obviously the album sleeves and stuff like that, and you've written definitely maybe on on the front of Definitely Maybe for me, which was equally kind of it. But yeah, I mean, they were so different from what they ended up with like, you know, the 99 stuff onwards. It was all a bit generic and a bit, you know, we've grabbed a Photoshop and stuck a thing on it. I mean, how did it happen that you didn't end up sort of rolling on with the latest stuff?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's now 3 distinct eras to Oasis, isn't it? There's up until recently, it was like the 90s and the noughties, or
yes,
the Microdot era and the non-Microdot era. Right now, there's obviously version 3, which is Live 25 onwards.
Yes,
but if you think about it, it wasn't just everything changed all at the same time, right?
Yeah,
more or less at the same time, anyway. You know, Bonehead and Gwiggs left. Owen was no longer producing the records.
Yeah.
I no longer did the artwork. No, I mean, this is all at the same time. Noel was no longer writing all the songs. You know.
Yeah, he was, because Gem and Andy were getting a bit of a look in there, weren't they? Yeah.
It's 2 distinct eras. I was in the first. Me, Owen Morris, Bonehead, Gwiggs. That's the first half, and then there's the second half, and of course now there's the third bit, which is an amalgamation of both, because I'm working with them again. Although, to be honest, I never stopped working with them in the noughties, because I did. It's almost like Noel regards those sleeves that I did in the 90s as mine. So if they ever come out again or get reissued, I get brought into work on it. So in 2004, even though I wasn't working on the new material, I repackaged. I did the 10-year anniversary DVD for Definitely Maybe. So still,
Which can say leaning over there.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the teens, in 2014, I repackaged the first 3 studio albums again for the remastered editions. So it was just all changed at the office. Everything changed, and I was gutted, obviously.
Of course.
But, you know, it is what it is, isn't it? You know, but but I'm still there. You know, I got a phone call off Noel just after the tour was announced. Was it back in the 24th? This would be, obviously. And he said to me, it totally caught me off guard. I was in the next room here, and he rang me up. And obviously, I've obviously got his number before, and when it flashes up, no, everyone's doing, as you can imagine. Noel's on the phone. Oh no, I was like, all right, yeah, great, thanks. He says, what are you up to? And I said, well, to be honest, I haven't spoken to him since the reunion announcement, right?
Right, okay.
Because bearing in mind, 2024, I'd been working with him all year on the Definitely Maybe 30th anniversary reissue.
Right.
And the question of the reunion came up, and he knew at the time that it was happening. But when I asked him, he was like, no, I'm fucking sick of it. I'm sick of going on about it. It's never going to happen.
Doing it.
So he's a great poker player, I'll tell you that. So when the news finally broke that it was happening, I was absolutely gobsmacked, because I didn't know. You know, only about 8 people did. Even his daughter didn't know. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. So when he rang me up 2020, end of 24, I said, what are you up to? I said, to be honest, mate, I'm still reeling from the news that the band's back together. And he says to me, talking of which, can you play the drums? And I went, very good. And he went, no. And then he said,
yes, you know, just like, you know.
Then he says, no, seriously, though, he says, you're designing the world tour program, whether you like it or not. So I thought, fantastic. So, and what a job that turned out to be. So that was great. And and then, you know, the relationship with the band never ended. I've always been doing stuff, and that was obviously something brand new, that tour program last year, which was great.
Yes.
But yeah, when the thing, I found, I think it was 90, well, the last thing I did for him before all this was the master plan.
Yes.
Which was 98, 99, I suppose. But, you know, it was noughties, 2000 onwards, everything changed.
So going back to the master plan and those out, I mean, where'd you get your inspiration from? Where'd you get the ideas from? I've seen, obviously, you've got your YouTube channel, and you were putting stuff up on there. You were, I think, I can't remember which was the last one I watched. But I mean, where'd you get your inspiration for these things? Because they're not your standard type of stuff. There's a lot of thought that goes into these, Brian. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, where do we get the inspiration? It inevitably has to come from the music. Or my approach to this is the same approach to every project, but then a bespoke solution, if you like.
Yes.
My approach is I just try and get involved as much as I possibly can with the band, or if not all the band, certainly the key decision maker, you know, which obviously in Oasis case was Noel and Richard with the Verve. But, you know, just hang out with them as much as possible. And that way you get to know what I call their culture, you know, what they like, what they don't like. Because, you know, you don't want to be suggesting things that are just going to get rejected or they're never going to, you know, but if you're going to measure a band, you know what listen to the music, read the lyrics, hang out with the band, just get a feel for them. And I don't know if I knew where it came from, I'd sort of write a book on it and sell it, but I don't. It just comes out, you know.
If you could.
Yeah. So that's it, you know, just, it's all about the music, isn't it, at the end? I mean, I used to hear stories back in the day. Well, not your story, it's quite common that certain design agencies, they wouldn't even listen to a record before doing sleeves, you know, it's almost like a factory churning them out. Whereas mine was, I liken it to like a bespoke tailor, you know, making a bespoke suit for you. The first thing he does is measure you up, you know. Then he cuts the cloth accordingly. It's the same sort of process. The measuring up process is listening to the music, if you like, you know. Like I say, immersing myself in the band's projects as much as possible and see what comes out.
And I guess, I believe I'm right with this, but you'll tell me. So you were at some of the recording sessions, weren't you? You were able to be there. But so, I mean, that must have been a great experience as well and given you some inspiration, but equally to watch the process and see how they work and how that chimes in with you. Exactly.
That's precisely the point, you know. I wouldn't necessarily sit there and think, right, today I'm going to come up with an idea, but you're just getting ingrained into the project. That's the point. With some bands, it's, you know, some projects it's not as possible as others, but the Verve and Oasis, which is obviously, you know, which I regard on the whole pretty much my best work, although the Super Furries was good as well. But again, it's the same process. I hung out with them.
Yeah.
I spent as much time as possible. I was on tour with them. I was in the recording studios with them. You know, we used to socialise outside of work together. And that's where it all comes from.
And that must have been an incredible experience, particularly in the mid to late 90s, you know, when everything was sort of kicking off. I mean, obviously, you know, the Verve sort of kicked off first, but you had all of that going on and you were like right at the epicenter of what was cool and what was happening.
It was incredible, you know, to be working with both bands at the same time.
Yeah.
And just living, it was a dream come true. We were like, there was nobody else like us really. We were almost like it was a very small unit. It was me, Matthew, Martin, John, Dave. We were like a band ourselves, but we made pictures, not music. You know, yes. That's what we were like in the 90s. We had this little studio in Shoreditch before Shoreditch was trendy because it was cheap. We were based there. And it was just an unbelievable time. I mean, I found a diary of mine the other day from 1994, which was I moved, I was back and forth. I moved to London as soon as I finished my degree in 88. But then I moved back to Manchester in 1990 because I was going to the Hacienda every week. Then I moved back to London again in 95 because there was just I was just in London all the time delivering artwork or the record companies were.
Yeah.
We were living in we lived in the office in Shoreditch initially because we couldn't afford anywhere to live. And then when we finally got it together, Noel Gallagher had a flat on Albert Street in Camden.
Right.
He lived there with Meg Matthews. And him and Meg moved out of there, I think it was May 96, and they moved into Supernova Heights in Belsize Park.
I remember it well.
When they left Albert Street, Noel put a good word in with the landlord, so we got his flat.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it was amazing. Well, you can imagine, it was Meg picked it, and it was like...
I was going to say, it's not going to be like a duffer, is it? If, like, you know, Meg's picked it and it's going to be in that sort of era, is it?
Yeah, it was in Albert Street, which is like the Regent's Park end of Camden, which is dead nice. And it was like this subterranean, it was like a Japanese style. So it was just beautifully done. And we just took the flat on. And so we were living in Old Gallagher's. In fact, there's no internet then or none to speak of. But word would get round this is where Noel lived. But it hadn't got round that he'd moved out. So every Saturday morning, it'd be like a bunch of Italian girls knocking on the door. No, they don't live here anymore, love. You know what I mean?
He's moved.
But, yeah, it was a dream come true. I was doing something that I deeply loved with bands I was banging to. It's funny actually because I used to think I was rich because I come from a very working class background. And I never had any money to speak of. I didn't have a load of money then either, but I just felt as though I was rich because I could effectively do anything I want when I wanted to. And anything I wanted to do was just like, I could go out on a weekend and buy some clothes, or I could take a girl to a nice restaurant. Do you know what I mean? And to me, that was being rich. I was like, oh, this is amazing, this. I can do whatever I want within reason. So, it was great.
You were living the life at the time that everybody wanted to be.
Yeah, it was something else.
Which is quite incredible, isn't it? And then obviously you come out of it and you come out the 90s, and what was the 2000s like for you, Brian? What was
pretty much a disaster, to be honest, because I wasn't working with Oasis anymore.
No.
Microdot, it was mad because through the Verve split up, right? When was that? 98? So my two biggest clients, I stopped working with almost overnight like that, without warning. So, and also at that time, it was just the beginning of the decline of record sales. It started transitioning around that time to downloads, there's some crazy statistics, like around that time, which was like 2000 or so, it was the first time since 1956 that teenagers' disposable income had gone on something other than records, and it was computer games. So all this combined together meant that the budgets were dropping, So budgets were dropping, work was drying up. My two major passion projects had ended, my head was battered, and I moved back up north, and I didn't do anything creative for about 7 years or so. And it was really dark. I don't really often talk about this, to be honest, because there's not really much to talk about other than, I was in a deep depression for a while and didn't do anything creative. I just ran out of ideas and everything was just doom and gloom. And I was drinking a lot, obviously, and it was just a very bad time. But, I thought to myself, this can't go on this. So I started rebuilding myself at the end of the noughties. I got a studio again, and I started working with a young guy called Mark Frith, who was in a band called the Troubadours. He was the first to believe in me again, so there was that. Then I started my Northern Soul Photo project, which was a massive, massive thing for me. I met Jill, my future wife, doing it.
Yeah.
And it got great. It got lots of critical acclaim, and I merchandised it as well, so I monetized it, so I was making some money again. I got a call from Oasis again, and this was like 2013, repackaged Definitely Maybe, Morning Glory. So the teens were on the up again. I moved up here to the Lakes, which was, life-changing for me, really. And then I've never looked back since. It's just gone from strength to strength again. And, working with Oasis on a new project again. Not as many record sleeves as it used to be, just simply because there's just no money in it anymore. And not that I do it for the money, but there's nothing really inspires me. And
that was the thing I was going to say is, is the inspiration still there? Because a lot of the stuff you do see, again, like I said, it's quite generic, and it seems to have been sort of like, almost a bit knocked out on Photoshop, from a standard image,
Because there's no budget for anything anymore, I noticed this like 20 odd years ago, let alone now, that the first thing that started getting cut back when sales of records started dropping was artwork. That was the first thing that went, because, it could be argued that a record sleeve doesn't sell a record in the first place, so you don't need to spend a load of money on it, which I kind of agree with, funnily enough. But ironically, in a time when back in the day records or music was sold via the radio, an oral medium, whereas nowadays it's sold via visual medium, the internet, and so you think it more than ever.
Exactly.
But it's not. There's no money in it. But it's more the fact that I work with Deja Vega, who are a band who I think are amazing. And they haven't got any money because they're not signed, but I still do that. So it's not all about the money, but there's not much that inspires me. So these days, obviously for the past couple of years, I've just been repackaging Oasis records, doing Oasis tour programs. Then there's all sorts of other spin-offs comes our way. That, for example, last year I did, Hyundai, the Korean car manufacturer.
Yeah.
They also have a finance wing that does credit cards. And they do this music festival in Seoul, and they got me into rebrand it because the CEO of Hyundai is a massive Oasis fan, basically.
Really? You wouldn't have thought, would you?
I am at the end of the day. I'm a professional graphic designer. It doesn't have to be record sleeves. So I do other corporate work as well, which is great because it tends to be higher budget stuff than doing record sleeves. And the reason they're getting me in to do it is because of what I've done with the Oasis and the Verve. So they kind of let me get on with it as well, which is important. I'm not one of those designers that it's like, I don't get it. If you're like, why don't you do it yourself if you've got such strong ideas? I'm effectively just becoming a technician. I don't work like that. So, but thankfully, because of what I've done before, I get commissioned by people who just let me run with it. So, the noughties weren't so clever. I started rebuilding towards the end of the noughties, and now we've got this, it's all singing, all dancing again. It's great.
And obviously, you almost touch on some of the memorabilia stuff as well, because I know, you sell things that occasionally come your way, passes, tickets, all that kind of stuff as well, sort of under the Microdot brand, but it's all genuine old, old stuff.
The thing we do with the memorabilia sales that we do, we've got a good reputation because people know that I was there,
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're a collector yourself. There's a ton of fakes out there. It's especially. I never get involved with this handwritten lyrics scenario. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? I'm not going to mention specific auction houses, but because people think if you're buying it from an auction house, it's got to be pucker, and that just is not the case.
Yeah.
There's been some horror stories, I think, recently, and people are spending a vast amount of money on stuff that is blatantly not real, So,
yeah.
Well, we tend not to get involved with that. And the only autograph stuff I deal with is stuff that I know for a fact is genuine because I've actually seen them. I work with the band, it's like. So, but other than that, people like to buy from us. We're not the cheapest, but then again, if you want to get something cheaper, you can always get it from Dave down the pub who's on eBay, but you haven't got a clue what you're buying. Anything that we sell, we stand by. And it's not the core of the business, that's not what we do. Obviously there are other memorabilia sellers, that's their business. It's just another income stream. Because a lot of this stuff, I've got a collection. I'm not a collector per se, but I do have a big collection just because I've worked on the project over the years. And I never sell stuff that I can't replace. So
right.
I've got proofs and stuff I've got all sorts from way back when, which is worth a fortune, right? But I'm not going to sell it until I'm riding off into the sunset. So that's it. I'm done. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
And that's not going to be for at least another 10 years. I don't think I'll ever retire, to be honest. Why would I retire? I love it too much, and I get paid for doing it. Why would you stop doing that? So, and I just don't like sitting about doing nothing. I like to keep busy. And, like I said, I love working. So, but I guess, like the hardcore memorabilia stuff I've got, like I said, it's all the original printers proofs and stuff that you just won't see anywhere else. That will get sold one day, but it's a good way off that yet.
I was going to say, it was one of the questions. You know, you must have the most incredible collection of just purely work stuff, but work stuff that, you know, people would love to have. I mean, I did an interview with a guy called Peter Hintz the other week, who was the head roadie for Queen, and he was selling some of his stuff. You know, there's all these personal bits and pieces. And one of the questions I asked him was like, you know, have you got a full set of autographs? And he was just like, no, it was a job. You know, you wouldn't go in and ask your boss. I wouldn't go in and ask my boss, you know, can I have your autograph? It was the same thing. But when you think about it, you think, well, actually, that's completely fair enough. But from a fan and a collector point of view, you don't think that. You know?
I mean, in terms of autograph stuff, I think I haven't got one single piece that's autographed by all of them, even though I was listening with them day in, day out.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I've got a copy of the Oasis magazine that's signed by them all. That's Alan, Bonehead, Quigsy and Liam, but no Noel on it. And I've got Noel on something else that he signed for my mum and dad. But that's literally it. I think I've got 3 pieces from back in the day that were signed by them that I'm keeping because they were signed for me back then, you know. But that's literally it.
It really is. As I say, when I spoke to Peter, and obviously speaking to you as well, you think, well, what a missed opportunity. But it was your day to day. It was work. Why would you?
Yeah. You know? It's almost like, and because there was no internet, the concept of selling stuff or the value of sign, it just wasn't the same. You know, there was no eBay, there was no forums, there was no Facebook groups. It just didn't come into it. I've got a magazine signed, so what? That's it. What do I need fucking 20 other bits signed for? You see what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And of course the thing is, you've got the memories because you were there. You know, and you were sort of, I mean, sat there with Noel and go, here you go. Here's the proof for what's the story. What do you think? And he's gone, yes. And you were, that's here. That, you know, you don't need the validation off the back of that. You don't need signatures and things like that. It's idiots like me that are going, oh, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
You know, but it's that kind of thing, isn't it? But I suppose, obviously now it's all sort of come back to the fore. And I mean, you did all the stuff for sort of like Liam's Definitely Maybe tour, didn't you? You know, with all the stuff.
What we did was for that was great to be involved in as well. It was specifically for the old London O2 gig. The billboards in my handwriting were all like these sayings like, you know, my favourite was Rasta because it's just so
it's just so random.
Just Rasta. Yeah. You know, all that business. What else was there? You know, there's loads of them. And when we got there, because obviously I'd written mine about this big, and then I emailed them down. So when we got to the O2 and just seeing, you know, Godlike, Rasta, Lover, all this business, honestly, it looked fantastic. It's a great weekend, that. We all went down. We stayed in a flat in Belsize Park, not far from where Supernova Heights was. Went to the gig, obviously. Just a great time. It's just, you know, that was the whole point, or still is the whole point of Oasis, isn't it? You know, it's all like just having a good time.
Just having a crack.
That's basically it. You know, that's it. You know, they come from a working class background and they've said, like, fuck it, we're going to have a laugh. We're going to, you know, just set the bull by the horns here and go out and do what we want and come with us. It'll be a riot. And that's it, basically, you know.
It's amazing. I mean, obviously, you guys did the Brits as well. I remember seeing pictures of Lee with his sunglasses on at the Brits.
Didn't it? You know, and it never wears off. You know, I think if we ever became blasé about it, or this is the norm, I think you've lost it then and you've gone up your own backside. But no, it's still incredible. All of it. It's still amazing.
We love all that. I mean, I know. I think I was up at your place one time when Bonehead turned up because he was floating around. So I mean, that must always be quite a good thing as well. But you've got the access to the stars, Brian. You know what I mean? It's you're in the spot.
It's never stopped being fun. It's always been great, and I'm just privileged to have been part of it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to ask you obviously the random question.
Okay.
We know 2027 is coming up. Obviously, there are rumours left, right, and centre, which I'm not going to ask you about for that. But Be Here Now, obviously, are we expecting some special edition off the back of that with some different photography and things like that? So I can get the orders in quick, Brian.
Right. Well, who knows? Because that's next year, obviously. I never get told anything until the last minute. Right.
I can believe that. Yeah.
That's the way it works. I wasn't told about the tour until it'd been announced publicly because I didn't need to know.
Yes.
If anything does happen for Be Here Now, I'll obviously, and I'm involved. Because there's I don't know if it does happen. I probably will be, but I haven't been notified of anything yet. So who knows what we're going to do?
Well,
and as for this tour next year, who knows? I mean,
I was going to say that the thing was, obviously there were, last year there were rumours for this year. This year there are rumours for next year. That's the trouble with.
The thing is, from splitting up in 2009 right up until last year, there was rumours every year they were getting back together. Every single year. So I'd be surprised if nothing happened. I can't see that being the end of it. But as to what the specific, what have you heard? What's doing the rounds?
Oh, well, so basically, I think the most recent thing I've heard is they're looking at 5 dates in Scotland.
Yeah.
I think I saw that last week. I don't know, I can't remember where, but yeah, there are 5 dates in Scotland, 8 to 10 day residency at Nebworth, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I think if I said anything on here, that would probably go around the internet as well. They're going to do 6 months at Man City Stadium. You know what I mean? I heard it on a podcast. It was fantastic.
Nothing would surprise me, but I don't. Nobody tells me anything.
Oh, absolutely, but again, it's one of those questions. You can never miss an opportunity to ask a question.
The thing is, because we've just been that busy, everything kind of got put on hold from the reunion announcement, which was August 24. That all plans we had just got put on hold. So I was doing the secret to YouTube is regular content, and
yes,
I've not done anything for about best part, not proper, little bits and bobs, but I've not done anything proper for a couple of years now. So we're going to get back onto that again soon. I've got a couple of projects on the go, which I can't really go into now. But, regular content, that's the key. So if you're getting stuff out there regularly, you will build up a following, and that's the way to do it.
Absolutely. And the nice part about it is I've got a few strands with it. Obviously, I've got the Oasis strand. I've done some bits with the Queen stuff, so that's good. And also was very, very fortunate to do some stuff with the Damned and Rascabies. And
really?
So we've been sort of like Facebook friends for quite a while, but he was one of those guys. I bumped into him at down at Brighton, I think, and I was like, "Come on, do me a YouTube thing." And he was like, "All right." Yeah. Went to the pub, sat in the pub with him for 2 hours, and just chatted and just like left it running. And he was absolutely epic.
I'm a massive Damned fan. First band I ever saw was the Damned.
Are you really?
Yeah. Massive.
Oh, well, I was going to say, you drop the link and have a look at the Rat stuff, because
the Black album still, I've got goosebumps now. I'm a massive fan of that. That's Machine Gun Etiquette, Black album, that era, those two albums. I was going to say, I'm a Black album, Strawberries and edging into Phantasmagoria type of thing, but Damned. Yeah. Obviously the classic. I mean, I don't know whether you saw it, but it was a couple of weeks ago. They had at Bonhams, they had Brian James's guitar. Oh, did they really?
Yeah, they had his SG up for sale, because obviously Brian passed away 2024, and that went for 70 odd grand.
Oh, did it really? As much as that? Wow.
Yeah. And the nice part about it was, so when I met Rat, it was the February, and I'd spoke to Bonhams about it, and I said to Rat, what can you tell me about the guitar? And he was like, well, I can tell you that Brian taught me how to play on it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, really? And he was just like, yeah. I said, yeah. And there's the stories on one of the things, but he was like, yeah, I was just hanging around the flat and, and not minding my own business. And I said to Brian, how do you play it? And he gave me the guitar and he taught me how to do a few chords and bits and pieces like that. And you're thinking, that's the story that nobody knows.
Exactly, yeah. Amazing.
But equally, he also said, well, whoever buys it, good luck, because it's not really in a good condition to be a player. It needs a new fretboard, it needs restringing, it needs this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. But it was so nice that he was so candid and happy to chat. And he's a lovely fella, is Rat.
I have met him. I met him at Glastonbury. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. He's a canny fella. So they're all cracking, but yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Rat. So it was so lovely that he was sort of almost my first chat. So that was really nice of him. So yeah, well, Brian, thank you ever so much. And as I say, I'll drop you the link to this, and hopefully we can get a few views for your good self and for Microdot as well, and obviously for me too. So thank you very much, and lovely to see you. And hopefully I'll see you again in the not too distant.
Nice one, mate. Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Brian, thanks a lot, mate. Bye bye.